Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give it a few minutes for people to join still. So let's just give it a minute and a half more before we officially start. Looks like participants are starting to stable out. If I give just one more minute and then we'll be able to start. Good, I think that's good. Bruno, Mark, you guys are ready?
Yes, we are.
Ready?
Good, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar with the title Solar Energy Financing. This we bring to you in partnership with our colleagues at Nedbank, who you'll be hearing a lot more from in the session. It is a short 1 hour session, so we're going to try to fit in as much information as we can in that 1 hour. So we'll be talking about, I'll give a quick introduction on the industry indicators in terms of where we are with small scale embedded generation, a few slides on the PV Green Card mechanism as a quality and safety mechanism, and then a little bit of the focus on the skills development component of the program to understand what really goes into this quality mechanism. And then my colleagues at Nedbank, both Bruno and Mark, will be presenting on a number of topics. So one will be the various home energy financing solutions, Nedbank's home loan service offerings, and its proposition to homeowners, the partnership with PV Green Card and why they found that important. And then we'll end today's webinar with a Q&A session where you'll be able to engage with us. I'm hoping that you will address all your questions to the Nedbank team to understand better what their service offering is and how you can benefit from it. So without further ado, I look forward to an informative session for all of you and a great conversation. Maybe just before I start, we do have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So please can I ask that you make use of the Q&A function, not the chat function. If you use the Q&A function, then we are able to monitor the questions. So just pop your questions in there as we go along. At the Q&A session, I'll then pose it to the panelists so they can address and answer your questions. Good. Kim, can we get the next slide, please? Great, so just the next one. Thanks. Just to start off with, so some industry assumptions on the status quo of small-scale embedded generation installations. You've seen I've put up some great examples of really good installations that we've seen. So as SAPVIA, we assume that we have installed capacity of over 1.1 gigawatts of solar PV in South Africa. This equates to roughly around 130,000 installations. We've managed to create around 7,000 jobs in the small-scale embedded generation market segment. And I've given you the emission reductions and the cost per kilowatt peak that we've seen in the market. Next slide, please, Kim. So together with those good installations, we also see a number of poor installations going up. And as the industry association, we thought we needed to get involved to better the quality of installations. Next slide, please, Kim. And we created a program called PV Green Card, which is a quality mechanism. And this program is basically based on 4 key pillars. The first being skills development. So we wanted people to learn how to do the installations. Accreditation. So we wanted the general public to have access to an accredited database of installation companies. Standardization, basically giving recommendations of how installation should be done in a standardized manner, and documentation in terms of having installers document the processes used, the components used, and the requirement criteria achieved through the installation. Next slide, please, Kim. So I'm going to go through all four of the pillars, but I'm going to focus a little bit on the skills development. We've prided this program on skills development. So we wanted people to be suitably qualified and have the best knowledge on best practice of solar PV installation. So what we did is we looked at the solar PV service technician qualification in South Africa. It's an NQF level 5 registered with SAPVIA. And the partners on this were SAPVIA, QCTO, and Masita. And they built this qualification, or we built this qualification as a 2-year qualification. And we saw as the market shifted from utility scale to small scale embedded generation, the focus really was on the second part qualification, which is about an 18-month qualification, looking at the mounting and wiring of solar PV installations. So from the second part qualification, we created or developed 2 components. So one is the 5-day solar PV installer training, and the other is the 2-day solar PV installer assessment. Next slide, please, Kim. So the 5-day training, let me just take your eyes to the bottom of the slide, which is the partners to the program, or the skills development program. So it was SAPVIA, Green Cape, Saritech, supported by DGS Berlin. BSW is the German Solar Association, who has a similar program in Germany called PV Passport. And of course, Sagen from GIZ, who made all of this program possible. So just in terms of the 5-day training course, it was developed from the part qualification, and it fits within the Masita and QCTO structures of short courses. So it has knowledge components, practical skills components, as well as work experience components. And it's set over 5 days. Next slide, please, Kim. So the 5 days that are covered in the training program is day 1 is basic electricity. So it's the overview and the basics of electricity. Day 2 is the introduction to solar PV. So this is understanding how solar PV works. Day 3 is planning of grid-tied systems, so the design and layouts of the systems. Day 4 is mounting of systems. So we look at roof structures and structural analysis and how to actually mount the systems. And day 5 is the commissioning and maintenance of the system. So once this is installed, how do you work with it? The second component we worked on is a 2-day solar PV installer assessment. So this is actually the gateway to the PV Green Card accreditation program. So it's a 2-day test. The first day is a theoretical test. The second day is a practical test. On the right-hand side, you will see pictures of what the assessment centers look like. So it's actually a roof structure, a simulated roof structure that we expect installers to get on, actually mount the panels and wire the system and switch on to make sure it works. Next slide, please, Kim. So this is how the assessment of the test is set out, the weighting between theoretical and practical. And there's a requirement of an 80% pass mark on this assessment to ensure that the candidate knows extremely well what they're doing in terms of the installation. So that's the skills development component. The next component is the accreditation component. So from an accreditation point of view, it's an entire online registration portal that you will find. At the top, the gray panels show you the steps as to how to register companies onto the PV Green Card platform. And the requirements here is pretty simple for us. So one is that you would have had to undertake and pass the assessment that I just spoke about. And 2 is that you would have to be registered with the Department of Labor as a registered person to do electrical installations. As we understood that the industry didn't work really in that manner, that you had full-time employed people doing both these things, we did say that obviously you don't have one person doing both of them, you could have 2 people doing them as well. So as long as the company has both these requirements within the company or access to this, we would accredit that company. There is a registration fee or a registration fee to be part of the program. So it's R1,000 registration fee for a year subscription on the platform. On the right-hand side is an example of, sorry, Kim. The right-hand side is an example of how the companies are laid out on the website. And as you can see, it's all hyperlinked directly to the company. So SAPVIA facilitates the interaction between customer and installer, but we do not play a third-party role or intervene in any other way. Next slide, please, Kim. Good. Standardization. This is the third pillar. So standardization is in terms of how the practice of best practice of how to do the installations. We have put together guidelines that are available on the website for anyone to download. It is the first iteration. We are currently looking at a review for a second iteration. On the right-hand side is a cheat sheet, just highlighting the different standards and where they apply in the solar PV installation for someone looking to get into solar PV. And the last pillar is documentation. So the documentation that is required by installer is this 3-page document. And really what it is a documentation or an as-built report of your installation. It gathers information on the components used, the warranties and guarantees of those components, the design of the system, the compliance mechanisms of what is required by law in South Africa, whether it be electrical installation, roof structure, lightning protection, commissioning with the municipalities, connection agreements with your distributor. So this is just a check sheet and an as-built report for your installation. Our goal with the PV Green Card program is to get every installation to have one of these PV Green Cards submitted with it. It is also available, sorry, Kim, if you can go one back. Yeah, it's also available on Android, iOS, and online, so you have access to it on your mobile phone. It's also offline capable, so you can take it to sites and fill in the data and the information, upload your pictures, and when you get back to Wi-Fi area, it will upload automatically to the system. Thanks, Kim. And just in terms of some of the achievements of the program to date, so we do have over 240 companies registered on PV Green Card platform. We've trained over 800 and currently it's sitting on 950 installers. There are 24 training institutions across the country that provide this training. We do have 2 assessment centers that do the assessment, one in Cape Town, one in Johannesburg. And we've assessed more than now 300 installers that have been assessed on this program. Next slide, thank you. So that's just my introduction on PV Green Card, but I'm gonna try to hand over now to our colleagues from Nedbank to talk about the financing of solar PV. Our first speaker is Bruno Chinandu, who is the head of strategy at Nedbank Home Loans, and he's going to take us through the first presentation. Over to you, Bruno.
Okay, thank you very much, Navashan, and thank you to everybody for tuning in to hear we at Nedbank are doing to try and help people finance solar. So I'm going to share a very short presentation, just to kind of position why, as Nedbank Home Loans, we decided to enter this space, what we believe is adding to the proposition, and then I'll speak a little bit about the collaboration that we've had with SAPVIA, or the PV Green Card, and I'm going to end by speaking about a pilot that we're conducting in the solar space on our home loan clients. So on the next page, sorry, Ken. So at a high level, if you look at why we entered this space, why we're exploring solar, is firstly, it ties in very well with our overall positioning. So Nedbank is the green bank, and we have dedicated, committed to sustainable development goals. And solar ties in very well with the SDG 7, which is the 7th goal, sustainable development goals. And added to that, to the brand positioning and the overall group strategy in loans book, right? And when we look at from a client perspective, clients seem to be entering the market a lot more because of what's happening. Yes, so Innovation, can
Sorry
you
to
hear me?
disrupt you. Yeah, I think the audience is struggling to hear you. They're asking if you can please speak a little louder.
I will try and speak louder. So I'll start again and just speak about the overall position that Nedbank is taking. So overall, solar ties in very well with our brand positioning as the green bank. And we are added to that, we are trying to find novel ways of growing the home loan book outside the normal home loans market. And what we've also found is from a client's perspective, we're seeing more and more clients starting to explore solar. But what we're finding is that many of them don't know where to start. They don't really know who they can trust. And when they do find a solution, they find the cost prohibitively expensive. Right? And so we feel like potentially there's a way that home loans can help clients address that. And the key pain point that we're trying to address overall is to help people with their electricity costs. Because what we see happening on our side is as people struggle to manage their expenses, it gets much harder for them to manage their home loans, which is pretty much a lose-lose situation. And so at a high level, we're trying to make sure we're entering this because it ties into the brand. We are trying to find ways to help guide clients through this process. And we are hoping this addresses the pain point of electricity costs. So on the next page, sorry, Kim. So when we looked at the current situation right now, what we find is many people are having to finance these solutions with a huge one-off cost up front, starting from 30,000 rands for things like a solar water heater or a heat pump, all the way to 200,000 rands for a PV, battery, and inverter. And that pretty much is the huge capital outlay that people have to pay and that they find prohibitively expensive. What we see as a desired situation going forward is what you see at the bottom, where the solution that costs 30,000 rands could become a 300 rand monthly payment if it's added to the home loan, and all the way up to the 200,000 rand solution that becomes a 2,300 rand payment for a full PV, battery, and inverter. And that makes it a lot more manageable in terms of paying. And on the next slide, we kind of show at a very high level what our view is of the proposition. So solar has a proposition in itself, which on one side, if you go with the one-stop cost option, you gain energy independence by going solar, you reduce your electricity bills, and you have a payback period within 5 to 6 years. And this period is reducing more and more as the solutions get cheaper. However, what we see as home loans is on the right side, you gain the same things if you're able to finance with your home loan, which is energy independence. You get a lower electricity bill, payback periods within 5 to 6 years. But added to this, we have increased your monthly cash flow when the reduction in your bill is where your bill reduces more than the increase in your home loan installment. So basically, if you finance solar with your home loan, you end up reducing your 2,000 rand bill, and you have a 1,500 rand increase in your installment, leaving you 500 rand cash flow positive each month. Okay. So on the next page, we just sharing at a very high level why we actually partnered with SAPVIA on this is because firstly, we've had a very long relationship with SAPVIA, and we also did participate in the formation of the PV Green Card, but we really like the aspect of having a certification that requires people to get accredited and go through some kind of a barrier to determine whether or not they are credible installers. And so by finding credible installers and tackling the issue of people having to finance these upfront with one-off costs, we felt that it was a good mix for us to try and explore this, solving this for clients. And this led us to a pilot that we ran. So on the next slide, basically what we did is we put an icon on the home loans website and invited people to come to us and just said, look, we can help you reduce your electricity bill. I showed them a couple of options that they can use. So we can either use your net revolve facility, which is all the prepayments you've made into your home loan to finance them, or potentially you could access the initial capital of your home loan. And the third option is for you to switch your home loan over to Nedbank. And what we did is put this up quietly without any marketing, had a lead form that people would click, and then they'll provide us certain details, and then we would help them find the solution and then also help them with the finance. So on the next page, so this is just showing the kind of information that we ask. It's general information, contact information, the ID number, where they currently live, and what their electricity bill is. And with this information, we were able to identify three PV green cards for three PV green card accredited suppliers in the area, show them how much they have available in the loan they can borrow, and also give them a sense of what the installment increase would be. And so without any marketing for the last couple of months, we've been able to get 160 leads, and the average bills are around 1,700 rands, and more than 2 million rands has already been paid out to help people finance these solutions. So for us, this is starting to answer the question of how much value people are finding this without doing much marketing. And what we're going to be doing next is trying to understand what the growth hypothesis is. So we are getting organic leads right now just based on the people who are currently interested in this. We would like to test going forward, which is on the next slide. What we're going to be doing in the next phase is sending emails out to some pre-identified clients who have enough scope and show them just a sense of what it would actually mean if they were to finance solar with their home loan, and then see what kind of uptake we get. And if we get a good enough uptake, and based on the learnings that we've gotten from this initial phase, we plan to come to market next year with with a more bespoke offering that can create more value for clients, for the bank, and hopefully for suppliers as well. And with that, I will hand over to Mark to give you more from the business banking perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruno. I apologize, I switched off your camera because your bandwidth was going, so we were able to hear you a lot clearer without your video, so I apologize for that. But our next speaker is Mark Boshoff. Mark Boshoff is the Head of Transformation and Sustainability at Nedbank Business Banking, and he's also going to take us through various financing solutions from a Nedbank point of view. Over to you, Mark.
Everyone, thank you, Vinesh, for that introduction. Thanks, Kim, for taking off that handsome photo, and we can then look at the slides. Nedbank has always been seen as the green bank, and we started this journey a good 6-7 years ago, and had a look at it from perspective of how do we assist our clients to become sustainable, and what is our role as a bank. When I say our clients, I'm referring specifically to our business type clients, and it's usually people that are in the industry, agriculture, or the service industry, and those types of businesses. And we had got ourselves recognized as the first bank to be carbon neutral. And the question started coming from our clients is, how do we get our clients to experience similar levels of carbon neutrality and to be more sustainable? And we then very quickly realized that we needed to have a very specific product that caters to this very important niche of the market. Next slide, please. So the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs as people call them, or refer to them fondly. There are 17 of them, and Nedbank has chosen a number of them to look at. Business banking chose one that very specific to our business and to our business clients, and that would be renewable energy, water, and recycling. And we've developed products around that. Most pertinent for today's discussion is the renewable energy. And next slide, please. So when we started out with very vanilla type products. It was easier to explain how they work, and it also it was more comfortable for our clients to have a look at. And we found that when we started out, there was one type of client, and that client wanted to own and wanted to be the controller of their equipment. And we started off, next slide, please. We started off with what would be the economic considerations for the client. And the main one that came to mind was that the client, as Bruno was speaking earlier today, the client benefits from that saving that they can make. And that saving can be converted into funding for the repayment. So what we strive to do right at the beginning was to get the repayment of the loan for the equipment to equal or be less than the saving on the electricity bill. This takes quite a bit of structuring, and we've got to a point where we get as close as possible to it, and it just makes it more beneficial for our suppliers, installers, and other technical people out there who have clients who need to get funding, because especially on large businesses, this doesn't come cheap, and not everybody's got a couple of £1 million or more to just fork out in cash. They'd rather do it on a funding basis. One of the things that we learned very early on was that a standard asset-based finance or any of those kinds of loans don't work for solar. Solar's got a much longer repayment period, and a typical car loan that would take you on asset-based finance would take you 5 to 6 years, just doesn't work on this equipment, and we've extended that period up to 10 years. So it works quite well. First of all, we're saying to our clients that we will add back their savings to their income to make their affordability better. Credit guys are very happy with that. Then we say to them that we will actually extend the term a little bit longer so that they can get that benefit of the asset starting to pay for itself. And there were tax incentives and all those wear and tear allowances and things that also work towards it. So we were actually doing quite well, and we were almost first to market with this. And when I say first to market, we were first to market with a very specific product to this deal, this asset base, rather than just doing it business as usual. Next slide, please. So the first one that we used was term loans, and this we all understand as a 5 or a 10-year loan that you take out. The bank says to you, you've got 5 or up to 10 years to pay it back. We will then say, well, let's have a look at how long it takes to get payback on the equipment and fit it into that space. So you can see there up to 10 years. It's based on the free cash flow. So that would what is available for repayments, typical affordability model. And we try and match the outflow to the saving that is made. When we look at security, we normally take it in the form of the assets or insurities of the client. And this is maybe something that we've got to look at or mention up front. Our offering is to our mutual clients. And when I say our mutual clients, I'm talking about clients of Nedbank and clients of yourselves as suppliers or installers. We will look at non-banked clients, but there we will expect the client to move banks to Nedbank, and that is not always possible or preferable by the client. But so it would be a mutually beneficial client to us. And in a nutshell, a term loan can then be repaid over a period of time at a certain interest rate. Clients can fix it to that interest rate, or they can go variable, and they may or may not have to pay a deposit depending on what their preference is and how the bank can structure it. Obviously, the more they put in as a deposit, the better the repayments are, and the easier it is to match the outflow of the repayments to the saving of the electricity. Next slide, please. The second product that we offer for people who want to own it directly, or clients that want to own it directly, is your asset-based finance. We all know this. I've even got a little picture there of somebody getting the car keys or the house keys. It's a finance. It is based on the asset. It's amortized or repaid over a period, also up to 10 years. We typically see 7 to 8 years, but 10 years have occurred as well. What a lot of clients prefer or really enjoy about an asset-based finance is you've got a single asset in a single account. So when their accounting is being done, they've ring-fenced the cost, they ring-fenced the interest, they've ring-fenced any other ancillary costs that go with it, and they know exactly what this asset is costing them. They also can then work out their depreciation on a straight line, or however they want to do it, based on the rates that are allowed by the receiver of revenue. There's not always a deposit required, and we often allow, or the clients even ask us, if that capital input VAT refund that they get on the 15% that they paid on the VAT, if they could put that in as a late deposit, if you want to call it that, and that just further reduces the repayment. Very nice little model, and it works quite well, and everybody understands asset-based finance from having bought cars and other assets. The third one that we offer, Kim, if you wouldn't mind just turning to the next page, is a Ned bond. And yeah, we very closely mirror what Bruno was telling us about clients' bonds. This is just a bond on your business, also financed through the the property value. If there's value available, should the client have paid off some stuff or some of the debt, we will then utilize that that credit facility that is still available. We could use that, or we could extend the bond having a look at it. Here we have repayable annually, semi-annually, or monthly. Most of the previous products that I've mentioned are generally monthly, but this one can be structured a little bit better or differently. The period is dependent on the term of the existing bond or can be renegotiated, and very, very similar to all the other offerings that we've got. These Ned bonds are typically 10 years, and hence it is also quite easy to adapt the product to it. Wear and tear allowances also accrue to the purchaser, as does the VAT refund. So there's a whole lot of benefits there. And once again, we try and get the repayment to equal the savings. Over the years that we've been running this, we have come across a new kind of client, or a different kind of client that looks at it very differently. They're typically very astute clients. This client typically says to me, Mark, I don't want to own the equipment. I don't want to be a little ESCOM or a little independent power producer. I want to walk into my factory in the morning. I want to switch on the light, and the lights and the energy must flow. And it's perfectly understandable. He says he's a specialist, or she says she's a specialist in producing widgets or doing accounting or whatever the case is. She's not a specialist in producing energy. And for that type of client, we've developed two different funding mechanisms. And if we can go to the next slide, please, Kim. And this is what I've just discussed, and where the client doesn't want to own it, there's economic benefits, and they can also benefit from locking in certain savings on the cost of the energy. If we go to the first product, the next slide. Rental discounting. Now, a lot of people sit up straight and have a look at this and go, and how on earth can one do that? I'm very tongue in the cheeks. I tell people that one day I was standing in front of the photocopier and I had this epiphany. I had a look at this paper coming out the one side, and I realized that we were being charged per sheet of paper that goes through there, with a bit of a maintenance fee and all those interesting things, depreciation. But you have to buy the paper. So then I suddenly looked out the window, and this ray of light struck me. I know it wasn't the sun, it was a bright idea. And I suddenly realized that the sun is free. So why don't we offer the clients a rental discounting over the asset? The bank will then own those panels that are on the roof. We will pay the supplier, yourselves, the installers, directly for the equipment that has been installed. We will have a supply agreement with you so that we can do future clients as well. And we then charge the client a rental over the period up to 10 years once again, with the option to extend that. Let's not forget that these rental discount, not the rental discounting, the panels are guaranteed for up to 25 years. So there's no reason why one can't actually extend this. The client has the benefit of having the ongoing equipment. There's a maintenance agreement in place, and it works very, very well. And that happens when you get irradiated by a photocopier. Some people have great ideas, other people might pick up other problems. But this does work very well for rental discounting. We've got a couple of clients that are on this basis, and a couple of installers that have signed up and are very happy with how it works. Nice little picture there for rent on lease. That's exactly how it works. The only caveat that we've got here, and this is between the client and his accountant, is with the new accounting policies, not all rental discounting or operating leases are off the balance sheet. And that was what was very, very appealing to clients. This is completely off balance sheet. Some of the accounting policies now require that it goes on balance sheet, and it causes a little bit of problems for the client if they want to do it on that basis. However, still a very, very nifty little product, and it works extremely well. Thank you, Kim. Then our flagship, if we can call it that, the power purchase agreement. And here I'm not talking to our clients anymore, as in the guy that wants to finance his equipment. Yeah, I'm talking directly to our suppliers and installers that are possibly clients of ours, or are looking at power purchase agreements, basically an IPP. In brief, and I'm sure I don't have to explain this to any of you guys, but in brief, it basically means that you as installer or as EPC or the supplier no longer installs and immediately sells the full asset. You retain the ownership of that asset. What you then get is an annuity income, and very busy slide, but if you follow those little lines of how the cash flows, what you can then do is you create a power purchase agreement with your off-taker. Is it a Pick and Pay? Is it a Woolies? Is it a factory? They then pay you per kilowatt hour or however you do it on the equipment, not on the equipment, on the energy that they consume. You have an agreement with them that says they will take all your production or just part of it, however it works for yourself. You then also tie them into a term, and it usually extends or is equivalent to their lease or that they're in the property. And you can then get annuity income. The client's benefit here is he doesn't have to own the assets. He doesn't have to worry about Eskom increases. He doesn't have to worry about Eskom switching off the lights. And the only thing that he has to look at is what is your escalation rate going to be. Works very, very well. Please note on the right-hand top side there, we've got equity investors or sponsors. This works very well with Section 12J, equity investment, where the investor can claim 100% for his investment in the first year of tax. So your investors are quite keen. You become a shareholder. The client could be a shareholder. And what is brilliant of the structure, because on the left-hand side middle block, you'll see special purpose vehicle. This is actually an independent power producing company. And you can slot a whole lot of those end users. You see, I've got 4 or 5 there at the moment in there, and you can actually build a portfolio of these things. As bankers, we love it because the risk is then spread. If one of your clients go bad, the whole thing doesn't fall over because you've got other clients to support you or other off-takers. Nice little product. It takes a little bit of time to set up. And if you can wrap your mind around some of those cash flows, you'll see that this thing works very, very well. The bank doesn't take a shareholding. What we do is we go in as an institutional funder, and once the loan is paid off, we'll step out again, and the dividends and investment flows and all those things return to the investors and the developer. And that there are SARS investors incentives, tax incentives, works very, very well. You're just going to need yourself a bit of a lawyer, or get yourself a bit of a lawyer and a bit of an accountant just to put the structure together so that it works for you. Next slide, please, Kim. That's our 5 offerings that we've got at the moment. I'm sure there may be questions. How we work, Bruno did it very well. I omitted a slide like that. What we will do is you can either bring the client to me. My details are available from Kim or from the bank itself. I will then have a look who the client's banker is. We'll then get the banker to chat to the client, see what the client wants, and we'll set up the thing on that basis. Why are we talking to, or why is business banking Nedbank Business Banking talking to SAPVIA members and affiliates, is because we actually, as our credit team, rely heavily on membership of SAPVIA and the PV Green Card. If you're on that thing, our credit guys very readily accept your credentials. Where you're not on that PV Green Card, we do far more due diligence, and it just takes a bit longer. So thanks, Kim and Navesh, for a wonderful product offering that you've provided. It just makes banks' jobs so much easier. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. And thank you, Bruno, for the insightful presentations. I think that was very useful. I do see a number of questions coming up. Bruno, I'd like to start with you. I see you've already answered some of the questions, but maybe for the purpose of those who are not reading the Q&A, the first question we had from Colin McKay is, will Nedbank only finance installs by PV Green Card installers?
Yes, so from a home loan perspective, clients can access their funds and pretty much do whatever they want with the funds, and they can use any installer that they want. However, for the pilot that we're running, when clients are asking us to help them find installers, we will only use PV Green Card accredited installers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for that. There's another question that you answered from Greg Walton, is what happens when a client sells his property that the installation is still on? And I'm assuming this is for the asset finance option.
I think that question was probably more for Mark, but from a residential perspective, if a client sells the house, it's a negotiation between two people, and if there is hopefully the client, the seller, the buyer also has finds the same value of solar and then adds the price into the house. But if there is a shortfall, the seller would be liable for the balance.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Bruno. Mark, there's a number of questions for you, so I'm going to go through them. So the first one is, please explain wear and tear allowance and taxation incentives. And this comes from Gabriel Krishna.
Gabriel, you're putting me on the spot here. Right. In the Tax Act, under Section 12B, you'll see that there's a wear and tear allowance, accelerated wear and tear allowance for the client. What this means is that under 1 megawatt, they are looking at changing it. You can claim 100% wear and tear on your equipment in the first year. This is to stimulate the economy, well, not the economy, to stimulate the industry that we're in, solar, and it just makes it so much easier for the client to then repay and gain benefits from it. It also makes it easier to purchase from yourself. You need a tax guide to take you through this. We certainly don't give advice on this, but it works very, very well. Please have a look at it in the Tax Act, or get your accountant or tax advisor to help you with that.
Thank you, Mark. The next question is also from Gabriel Krishna, and he wants to please explain the VAT impact.
Okay. As you know, a client, when he buys the system, say he's buying a R1 million system from you, Gabriel, he will have to pay 150,000 Rand VAT on that. It's called a capital VAT input. And he claims it in his VAT return on a monthly basis. He puts in his VAT return. The receiver of revenue based on that capital VAT input will then repay or refund him the 15% that he paid on that. And we then say, well, you're getting that 150,000 Rand back. Why don't you reduce your 1,150,000 Rand loan if there's no deposit, and then you only have to pay back R1 million over 5 or 6 or 7 years, or whatever the case is, and it reduces the repayment. So standard VAT practice, nothing strange from it. If you in the car industry, say you're a rental guy, you can claim the VAT on that vehicle that you buy. You can claim it back. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Mark. Bruno, I'm going to bring you back into the mix. There's a question from John Bafton. He's a working elderly person who faces increasing financial pressure from escalating direct Eskom power costs. It would benefit him to convert to solar. As a Nedbank client for 40 years, is he eligible for a loan to finance a solar system, as he is bond-free, so he doesn't have a home loan or bond?
So I think that you'd probably have to find the right instrument to finance it. So I can only speak from a home loan perspective, and I think we can have a look at whether or not he would qualify, but it purely depends on the mechanism that he kind of feels he can use, and also just have to look at how this ties into like our credit policy. But I'm pretty sure that we can find a way for it to help fund. It's unlikely to be a homeowner if he's saying that he's an elderly person.
Perfect. This is a very important question. I also wanted to ask this. So when we look at quality from a SAPVIA point of view, we look at the installation of the system, but we also look at the components being used. So the question is from an anonymous attendee, and the question is, are there any requirements on the quality of hardware used in the installation? If it's an 8-year loan and the hardware used is low quality, what will the implications be?
Vinesh, let me take that question. The answer is that we rely on the undertaking or the agreement with SAPVIA that proper equipment will be used. We do have a look at past track record and we will have a look at that. Obviously, we don't want an asset that's going to fall apart or cause problems going in the future. Neither does the client. So it's in the best interest of the industry and of the banks and of the client that we use good quality. One of the things that we insist on is that there's a maintenance agreement in place. And that maintenance agreement is usually with the installer or the supplier, and that cost would then come directly from the supplier to do it. So possibly it's not always viable, but possibly it's the best way to do it is to use good equipment and build a reputation for yourself going forward. I'm sure that if it came to light that substandard equipment or quality was being used, it would start getting out in the market, and the banks would stop financing those types of installations.
Good, thank you for that, Mark. There's another question from Nareel Howitz. How can a developer building new houses with a PV rooftop tap into the scheme?
Bruno, is that one for you or for me?
For the developer, I think that's probably you. Not sure.
There we go. We're playing tennis here. How can with a PV rooftop tap into these schemes? What we normally say to developers is that it's better to have that installation done through the architect and be part of the building and part of the cost. Then you don't need separate financing. It's when you start retrofitting that it becomes a little more difficult, and it's usually, as I said, better to get the architect to have it drawn into the or drafted into the plans, and then it becomes part of the cost as it stands. Retrofitting is quite difficult, and it causes a bit of problems. I don't know if that answers the question.
Thanks, Mark. There's a question from Bilal Rahim, and he wants to know, can you get more details on the 12J funding model?
Yes, once again, in the Tax Act, it's Section 12J. Have a look at it in there. There are quite a few investor companies that run these models, but it's you can have a look at it through them. If you type in Section 12J into good old Google, you'll actually see a whole lot of these companies come up. You'll also see all the tax implications and things like that. Just be warned that there's a sunset clause, and with COVID, it doesn't look like, or there's not much clarity on whether they're going to renew this, but it was going to expire 2021, I think. They wouldn't be allowing any new ones, which would be a great pity because it did stimulate the economy and the industry. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. There's a question from Papalele Gumede, who says, for the rental discount option, you mentioned it can be extended over and above 10 years. What is the maximum extension?
Good question. We haven't seen an extension beyond the additional 5 years. We normally do it another 5 years. And then often the client then just says he wants to exercise his option to buy it, which has some tax implications. And we look at it on that basis. We don't really see, they call them in the industry, they call them evergreen rentals. And I haven't really seen, I don't think it's been in the business or in the industry long enough to actually see the initial 7, 8 years plus 5 plus another 5. Who knows? Maybe it's a new way to do it. Thanks for that question.
Good, thanks. There's a lot of requests for contact details. Mark and Bruno, should we send the contact details to both of you in the thank you email directly after the webinar, or are there other contact people within Nedbank that would field these?
Very welcome to send my details. But as I mentioned, you will our clients know who their banker is. Their banker is fully trained to assist with the application, and it's usually much quicker to speak to your client, say to your client, contact your banker, and they will then get the application going off the ground. Alternatively, speak to myself. My details will be in the email. I'm happy that you send it. For ease of reference, it's Mark, M-A-R-K-B-O, Bravo Oscar, at nedbank.co.za. Mark B-O at nedbank.co.za.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Mark. We'll include it in the email as well that will then be sent out to all participants. There's another question from Gabriel Krishna who says, how do we get onto Nedbank's installer panel? We are Nedbank clients. So I'm assuming they're not PV Green. I'm not sure if this is an installer or this is
Yeah.
home.
Very good question, Gabriel. In fact, I think you've asked the most questions, and that's great. It's great to have this kind of feedback. Gabriel, Nedbank, there's two viewpoints here that one's got to look at. The one is if you're talking about an installer to install PV panels on Nedbank clients' roofs or properties and that, we don't have a supplier list or installer list. That we recommend that the client goes and looks at the PV Green Card and selects their own supplier. This was a huge argument that we had internally, and it basically boils down to reputational risk. The bank is very wary of getting into a situation where we recommend a supplier and possibly that supplier is not up to scratch or doesn't use the good, the right equipment and stuff, and there is a problem, and they turn around and say to the bank, it's our fault. Various viewpoints on that, but the prevailing one at the moment is we don't have an accredited installers list. We rely heavily on PV Green Card, and that's why I said we were so pleased that we could work so closely with SAPVIA and the PV Green Card. If you're talking about putting panels or providing services to Nedbank itself, we've got a number of campuses that have already got on and some that still need to. We can give you the details of our procurement officers, and they will then put you through the process to get onto their panel and look at it on that basis. So it's almost a virtuous circle. We'll fund your clients, but we'll also utilize you as a supplier should you your tender be accepted when we have the next installation. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. There's another anonymous attendee question. So just confirming that. So if they bring a customer to you, they can still be financed through Nedbank, even though they are not PV Green Card installers.
Absolutely. What we would then just do is we'd get our asset valuation team who do to do a due diligence on you. You'd get a whole lot of questions. We'd have a look at sites that you've already done, all that kind of stuff, just to determine a track record in that. Not being on on the PV Green Card is not necessarily exclusion, but it does assist us in getting at one stage when this was a new market, there were a whole lot of guys that got onto the bandwagon, and some really shoddy work was done that caused a lot of problems. SAPVIA Green and the PV Green Card has managed to get the standard up, and it's just been beneficial to everybody in the market.
Indeed, thanks, Mark. Go for it.
So, and just from a home perspective for end users, with us, it doesn't really matter as well. What we look for is there enough value in the property for us to lend the amount against? Right? So we look at the value of the property and then determine whether or not people will be financed to bring their own installer. However, like I said previously, if they ask us to help them find an installer, we will use the PV Green Card accredited list.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Bruno, as well. There's the last question, I think. It's from Pepsi Bayoko. There's two questions here. So one is, who can they speak to at Nedbank to introduce photovoltaic thermals? So this is hybrid solar panels to recommend to a potential client. And two, how do we become the Nedbank's vendor? Mark, I think you addressed some of this, so if you just want to reiterate or summarize.
Pepsi, could you just give some clarity? Are you asking, will Nedbank actually recommend these panels to potential clients? I think the answer is most probably not, for that very reason that we're very wary of the reputational risk that can come about. But you would obviously come across clients that want to purchase these panels, and they would then either be Nedbank clients or not, and we could work through that basis. But there's nobody that's going to actually recommend the panels. That just would not be fair to your colleagues and to your competitors. And also, it's not Nedbank's policy at this stage. I'm hoping that you're on the SAPVIA thing, because SAPVIA Green Card site, because you would then almost get free advertising. And Nedbank vendor we've discussed. You actually, to an extent, become a Nedbank vendor by being on the SAPVIA Green Card thing. How's that for punting it, Nivesh?
Good job. Thank you very much, Mark. The anonymous attendee is asking another question that says, do I need to be registered DOL electrical installer to be able to get financing as an installer for customer installation? From a SAPVIA and PV Green Card point of view, you do have to. This is a national law that all electrical installations are done by registered DOL installers. But from a Nedbank perspective, Mark and Bruno?
All I can say is absolutely. If it's your requirement and criteria, we'd be the same. The last thing we want is that somebody gets electrocuted or badly hurt because we've used installers that may not be properly qualified.
Yeah,
exactly. Same on our side. We rely heavily on SAPVIA and the PV Green Card to vet the people. So we rely on that, and we try to stick to the money side of it.
Perfect. Good. I think this is also important for installers and customers that are both protected with DOL registered installers. It protects the installer from a point of view that they are regulated, and it protects the customer from a point of view that there is there's a feedback loop, or there's a mechanism for them to take recourse on bad installations should someone get hurt from this installation. The next question is from Tish. Tish asks us, are you funding in the region of Zimbabwe?
Absolutely, Tish. We've got Nedbank Africa Regions. It's a division of Nedbank Corporate Investment Bank. And we have in Sub-Saharan Africa, we've got Zimbabwe, Swaziland, Namibia, Lesotho, that we fund in. It's quite hot off the press. They've actually started doing their own funding from the out-country point of view. So yes, we do, and same principles apply.
Good, thank you for that, Mark. I think we are out of time. We've got 2 minutes left that I still have to ask Bruno to please close out for us. We're noting the questions that are still coming in. We will try to respond to them as we go through the week. But just to reiterate to all of you who asked, we will be sending out a thank you email with the recordings of today's session and the presentation, so you will have access to it. And that's all from my side. So just over to you, Bruno, to do a quick closeout.
Thank you, Niveshan, and thank you for everyone listening on the line. I'm sorry that my data connection wasn't good enough for you to see my face, but maybe that was a good thing. But from my side, really, I'm very privileged to be able to present this to this forum. And from our side, we're really trying to answer the question around what future we would like to see, considering that we've had a lockdown and industries are struggling. And for us, one of those answers is a future where we see our clients spending less money on electricity. And we really hope that you and us can kind of collaborate and co-create something together for clients. And with that, I will hand over to Niveshan. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Bruno. As I've said, recordings and presentation will be sent to all participants. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Thank you very much.